All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Dustin Howard. I'm the administrative law judge assigned to hear today's petition. Pursuant to Railroad Law Section 90, for a new crossing. Hold on. A new crossing near milepost 54.52, just north of the Breakneck Tunnel in the town of Fishkill. This hearing is being recorded today via video, and we will have there is a sign-in sheet over to my left, your right. I ask that members of the public and anybody present please sign in so we have a record of who's attending the hearing today. All right, for the record, today is July 27th, 2022 at approximately 11:06 a.m. We are hearing case number 7006, a request for hearing pursuant to Railroad Law Section 90, Breakneck Ridge in the town of Fishkill, crossing Metro North Hudson line. I am Dustin Howard, the administrative law judge assigned to hear the petition, and I will be presiding over the hearing today. As a preliminary matter, the parties have discussed with me prior to going on the record what to do about evidence. So what we're going to do before we proceed is mark each party's exhibits and then discuss whether or not we will have those stipulated into evidence. So for the purposes of moving forward, I have a couple of exhibits that I want to mark as my own prior to moving forward. The first I'm going to mark as ALJ Exhibit 1, which is the petition. This isn't dated, but it has been received April 13th, 2022, so that's marked and entered as ALJ Exhibit 1. The second document I want to enter is a letter from my office to both the town supervisor, Ozzie Albra, and Matthew Davidson of Parks and Recreation is requesting that the railroad, Metro North, provide a letter to confirm that they had waived their right to a hearing. This letter is dated April 27th, 2022. I'm going to mark that as ALJ Exhibit 2. The third document I'm going to mark as ALJ Exhibit 3. Is a letter to my office from General Counsel of the Railroad in regards to the present hearing and confirming that they had requested or they had waived their right to a hearing and confirmed what the town of Fishkill represented in their petition, which I will read into the record momentarily. So that is Exhibit 3. The fourth document I have is a letter that my office received from Maggie Clements, Associate Attorney of the New York State Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation Society, providing design rendering, which provided some exhibits that they intended to have admitted into the record. But I believe we'll handle that later as the department presents today. But this letter is dated, the letter is not dated, but it was received by our office on April 28th, 2022. And that will be ALJ Exhibit 4. And the last document I'm going to admit, that I'm going to mark as an ALJ exhibit, as ALJ Exhibit 5, is the hearing notice dated July 14th, 2022, the accompanying service list and affidavit of service. So that is exhibit number 5. Okay, now the department, who has evidence that they'd like to have entered into the record before we begin? Is it just the department?
Yes.
Okay.
Just as a point of clarity, it's the Office of Parks, not the Department of Parks.
I apologize. So the Office of Parks.
And Your Honor, the New York City Department of Environmental Protection will be presenting later today. We have physical copies of the presentation, which includes photographs and maps. Would you like that now entered into the record, or when we present?
It's part of a slideshow?
Okay, yes.
Yeah, so what I think we'll do is, as you come up to present, we'll have you present the hard copies, and then I'll, assuming there's no objection, we'll enter them into evidence as you present, since those are singular exhibits. I think that'll be easier unless anybody disagrees. Okay.
No,
Mr.
it's
Byer?
fine. Oh, no, I was just going to say, for purposes of speaking, I don't know if people have to come up to the podium to get to the...
Yes, so I apologize. So since we are recording this via video and this will be transcribed at a later date, I'd ask that members who aren't at council table, the presenters will present to my right over here. Make sure you speak into the microphone so that we have a good audio recording. And then for council at table, also speak into the microphone. What I'll do momentarily is have everybody enter their appearance, that is the parties. If members of the public, you will have an opportunity to speak after the parties have made their presentations. Then that will occur at the podium in front of me. So, Mr. Byer.
Yes, the department just there's 4 pages. I think the easiest thing to do is enter them as individual exhibits.
Okay.
And I do have copies for...
Okay, do you want to give me the copies and then we can go through them? Okay, these are 4. So I have 4 pages here. Which one do you want to be your first exhibit?
The top one, Your Honor.
So, and that is agency comments, OP, RHP?
Yes. All 4 of these are design plans that show different vehicle accesses to the bridge we'll be discussing.
All right, which one do you want me to label as number 1?
The top one, the first one.
First one. So for the purposes of the record, is there anything that differentiates this document from the next one? It's got the green.
Yes, this has, it shows 3 surface options, and it shows vehicles accessing the bridge from Route 90.
Okay, so I'll mark that as Department's Exhibit 1. I'm sorry, I've got 1, so I'll mark it as Department's Exhibit A. The next one, I'll mark as Department's Exhibit B. Which is a additional picture. This on the left-hand side of the illustration, it says crash-rated barrier gate number 1. That's B?
That's correct, Judge, yes.
Thank you. The third document is on the left-hand side at the top of the illustration. It says DEP crash-rated barrier gate. That's exhibit. I'll mark as Exhibit C for identification.
That's correct, Your Honor.
Okay. And then the last document says proposed emergency vehicle and DEP access configuration. I'll mark that one as Department's Exhibit D. Okay. So I have this document marked as Exhibit D. All right. Is the department requesting that these be admitted into the record?
Yes, Your Honor, we do.
Is there any objection from the town or the railroad?
No objection.
No objection.
All right, hearing no objection, I'm going to admit these into the record as marked as Departments Exhibit A through D. Okay, I'm only just now realizing that we didn't do introductions for the record. So why don't we start with the department? Please state your name and who you represent.
Howard Byer, Associate Counsel for the New York State Department of Transportation.
And who do I have appearing on behalf of the Town of Fishkill, the petitioner?
Ozzie Albert, Supervisor of the Town of Fishkill.
And on behalf of the railroad?
Susan Sarch, Metro North General Counsel.
All right, thank you, everybody. Okay. So moving forward, the petitioner will present first. They may call witnesses and present testimony through questioning if they wish. It sounds like the the Town of Fishkill is going to have several entities present on their behalf. But first, it's my understanding that the town supervisor has a statement he would like to make. But before you do so, sir, I'm going to swear you in. Can you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, please state your name for the record and spell it.
Ozzie Albra, O-Z-Z-Y, A-L-B-R-A.
And who do you represent?
The Town of Fishkill as a supervisor.
Thank you, sir. You may go ahead and provide your statement.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Ozzie Albra. I am the Town Supervisor for the Town of Fishkill. Since taking office, I have been serving in a coordinated capacity between the Town of Fishkill, the Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail, and the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historical Preservation. On behalf of the Town of Fishkill and more than its 24,000 people who call Fishkill home, I would like to thank Your Honor and everyone in attendance to this hearing today as we establish a record with regards to the petition submitted by the town earlier this year and received by the Department of Transportation on April 13th. Our petition requests the Commissioner approve the construction of an above-grade crossing over the Metro North Commuter Railroad Company Hudson Line at MP 54.52, north of the Breakneck Tunnel in the Town of Fishkill. This above-grade crossing will be a bridge to be incorporated into the planned Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail, a project which, upon completion, will be overseen by the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historical Preservation. This petition seeks approval for a crossing to connect the planned trail areas for a linear park some 7 miles in length. North of this proposed connection, trail areas lie to the east inland of the MTA lines. South of this proposed connection, trail areas lie to the west shore side of the MTA lines. This connection will enable safe pedestrian and bicycle crossing of MTA lines while providing picturesque river views. Additionally, the connection will provide vehicle access for the New York City Department of Environmental Protection to DEP facilities which currently have no vehicle access point. The proposed connection is irrefutable in the public interest. The Hudson Highlands are a singular place in the entire world. Few places can rival the compelling beauty and unique history of the Hudson Highlands. In the Town of Fishkill, we recognize how blessed we are to be located here in such a place rich in natural wonder and steeped in history. We likewise recognize the opportunity presented by this connection and the related proposed Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail to promote awareness and natural beauty of our area and foster sustained growth to our area economy. Support from the Department of Transportation in the form of an approval for this proposed above-grade connection comprises of essential step in the process making this vision a reality. And I would like to reiterate my thanks to Your Honor, the Department of Transportation, for holding this hearing today. I will conclude my comments by introducing Kevin Ehrholtz, who is representing the state parks and who can introduce the other participating parties today. I would like to submit a written copy of my remarks for the record without objection.
Any objection?
No objection.
The railroad?
No objection.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Albra.
Thank you.
If you want to give me a copy right now, I can mark it in as Town of Fishkill's exhibit. We'll give you one. Okay. So before we proceed, I intended to read the petition into the record, and I apologize that I have not done so at this stage. So if there's no objection, I'll do that now, and then we can proceed with the town's presentation. Okay. Dear Commissioner Dominguez, this is ALJ Exhibit 1. The Town of Fishkill, Town of the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation submit this letter to request a hearing pursuant to Railroad Law Section 90 for a determination by the Commissioner of Transportation on the proposed new above-grade crossing of Metro-North Commuter Railroad Company, Hudson Line near approximately MP 54.52, just north of the Breakneck Tunnel in the Town of Fishkill. The proposed bridge, known as the Breakneck Ridge, will be part of the future Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail, a multi-use, non-motorized recreational trail, and will additionally be a vehicular access way for the New York City Department of Environmental Protection to access its Hudson River drainage chamber from State Route 9D. Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail, Inc., HFT, Inc., has designed the Breakneck Bridge with significant input from OPRHP, the Office of Parks, New York City Department of Environmental Protection, Metro-North, and New York State Department of Transportation. OPRHP intends to construct the Breakneck Bridge and is presently negotiating with the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, Metro-North, for an easement. After construction, the Breakneck Bridge will be owned by OPRHP and operated and maintained by HHFT, Inc., and used by the public and New York City Department of Environmental Protection. The town will not own, construct, operate, maintain, or use the Breakneck Bridge and submits this request for a hearing on behalf of OPRHP, HHFT, Inc., and New York City Department of Environmental Protection. Metro-North was offered the opportunity of a public hearing by OPRHP and the Town of Fishkill and declined. The attached design rendering excerpts depict the Breakneck Bridge as presently designed, showing views from the east and west approaches from above and from the river. Additionally, attached are excerpts from current design document sets showing foundation plans and bridge materials. The total length of the bridge is approximately 437 feet, with a main span of 127 feet over the MNR, Metro-North Railroad, tracks. The height of the bridge, measured at the center of the main span from proposed grade to top of deck, is approximately 24 feet 8 inches. The bridge is composed of glulam deck members, a weathering steel arch box girder, concrete piers and abutments, and concrete piles. The approach from 9D to the bridge is approximately 24 feet in length and has a 2% grade. The Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail to the north of the bridge provides an approach at 6 to 7% grade. To the south of the bridge, a temporary access path will be constructed at approximately 165 feet long with 4% grade, in anticipation of the future trail extension. Should you require any additional information, please do not hesitate to reach out to the town at oalbra@fishkill-newyork.gov or to OPRHP at matthewdavidson@parks.newyork.gov. 518-527-5006. We look forward notice of the date, time, and location of the requested hearing, and it's signed by Mr. Albra, I believe, Supervisor, Town of Fishkill, and Executive Deputy Commissioner, New York State Office of Parks and Recreation and Historic Preservation. So that is the petition. If the town would have their representative state your name for the record, and then you may proceed with your presentation.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Kevin Ehrenholtz. I'm Associate Counsel for the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. State Parks intends to submit evidence in support of the Town of Fishkill's petition. The Breakneck Ridge Trail in the immediate vicinity of the proposed bridge is one of the most popular hiking destinations in the Northeast and has seen a significant and steady increase in vehicular and visitor use traffic over the past decade. This increase in use has resulted in several safety issues, not the least of which is pedestrian traffic along the New York State Route 9D corridor, as well as the very active railroad right-of-way. The proposed bridge and connector will safely separate patrons from the roadway and the railroad tracks. To better illustrate the design and features of the proposed bridge, I would like to introduce Amy Casala, the Executive Director of Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail.
Ms. Casala? Oh, you're over here.
I am.
Please state your name for the record.
Amy Casala,
Can you spell the last name?
K-A-C-A-L-A.
All right, can you raise your right hand for me? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. You may proceed.
So as just introduced, this presentation will give a little overview of the need and the safety conditions on site, existing conditions, and some of the bridge design views. So this is a photo of Route 9D, which is a state route just north of the tunnel. This is essentially the parking area, and there's including a train station here where people are walking off-road on the inside of a guardrail in a very busy corridor. Current speeds on the road are 55 miles an hour. This was determined to be an unsafe condition about 15 years ago. Locals started working together and kind of has evolved into the Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail project to resolve safety concerns for hikers entering Hudson Highlands State Park Preserve. South of the tunnel is also a constrained area, and while there is weekend service to the Breakneck station to have people arrive by train on weekends, during weekdays, most people are arriving in the Cold Spring station. If they're headed towards Breakneck, they're walking down this high-speed corridor, and again, no pedestrian accommodation. You can see people even with strollers going through here, and then unfortunately also through the tunnel, which has a safety walk but not a standard sidewalk and is not a safe condition. At the Breakneck station itself, this is the prior condition here, where it's just, this is the station as it is with staircases. There was, until recently, no safety fencing keeping people from walking on the tracks. This station has weekend-only service, currently at 6 trains a day. Trail stewards who have counted people deboarding have noted up to 435 people arriving on one train. So when 435 people arrive into that corridor, it obviously creates a higher level of pedestrian and roadway conflict because there's just not room for people to move safely to the trailhead, which is their destination. That trailhead has been seeing a steady increase as referenced. Here's some data, statistics from the last several years that just show that upward trend in visitation. This is just on weekend-only counts that have been conducted by the New York-New Jersey Trail Conference. So it doesn't really reflect the whole year, but it's our best source of information at this time for visitation to Breakneck. Between social media and then increasingly also since COVID, when people are seeking ways to get outside for interaction, this has become even more popular as a destination. The coalition who have come together to help solve this problem is shown on the slide. So now Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail, Inc. has existed for the last 2 years, but this group has been working since about 2006 together in various kind of stages. People have added it over time, but to sort of plan and assess how to solve this safety concern with people headed towards the Hudson Highlands State Park Preserve. The resulting vision as it currently stands for the Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail is shown on this map. It is a 7.5-mile trail with different parking and other amenities to really help better serve the public and address some of the negative externalities that occur from that visitation in terms of garbage and the need for bathroom facilities, et cetera, to make sure that this is not negatively impacting the quality of life in local communities any more than necessary. And also, as the supervisor notes, we think this as a destination will also provide some economic opportunities for these communities. Regional outdoor tourism is one of the identified economic areas by the regional council's plan. It's a very constrained site, as shown in the topography. The fjord name has come from this space where glaciers have carved into the Hudson River, which is tidal. And you really have a very strong transition from the steep slopes of the mountains down to the river, with just the corridor of the railway in between, in some instances, as the only flat land, as shown in that other photo with the railroad and Route 9D. The entire project has been considering how to plan for sea level rise assumptions as adopted by the state. We've been using the high projections in our design to ensure that the trail and facilities that are built as part of this project are outside of sea level rise. The 7.5 miles goes through 4 different zones, and this connects the communities of Cold Spring to the south and Beacon to the north, and passes through the town of Phillipstown and Fishkill along the way. The main trail, which is the 7.5 mile trail, is we call it a trail for all. We're looking for that trail to be designed to meet ADA outdoor rec standard, and that will look something like this as it goes from south to north along the shoreline between the railroad tracks and the water. As it crosses in over the tracks back onto the east side of the rail corridor at the Breakneck area. Heading north through the woods, it could be just an at-grade gravel path. And then as we cross Fishkill Creek heading into the city of Beacon, you also can have a gravel path, and there's an existing utility corridor there actually. Some other areas for gathering, and this is at the Breakneck area where we want some space for all of the people deboarding the train to have to kind of gather, get out of the way, and not necessarily block the trail. And that would be this large trail bank, but there are other pieces throughout the park system where, of the linear park, where you have spaces to pull off, sit, enjoy a good view. And that's part of the accessibility also, just to make sure there's rest points at intervals for people. We'll also be improving other areas within the park preserve. This is at Little Stony Point, where we're creating family-friendly spaces, immersive meanders for people to enjoy these assets. And then Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail would be operating those, and so it just adds some capacity to this park preserve. Other destinations, and these are highlighting the different zones. This is in the forest zone, sort of the concept of a canopy walk or a lower overlook. This is at the southern end of Breakneck Point is the lower photo, just to create some opportunities to access the river that don't exist and enjoy this great view. Anticipated phasing for the construction of the project is shown on this map. 1 is Breakneck Connector and Bridge. 2 is a section that would go from Duchess Manor, which has been purchased to be our future visitor center, and a trail connection that would connect down to the Breakneck Connector area. 3 would be continuing from Breakneck south to Cold Spring to continue that connection to ensure people are not walking on weekdays through 9D corridor there. And then 4 and 5 are the heading north from the visitor center and improving spaces that are already trails in Long Dock Park and Madam Brett Park, and new trail spaces within the forest zone. So for Phase 1 Breakneck Connector and Bridge, the construction roles, as have been mentioned, is that Breakneck Connector would be constructed by Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail, Inc., while the bridge is constructed by State Parks. The scope of the Breakneck Connector, and this is in the area of the train platform arrivals and the trailhead it serves, is about a mile area. This is the northbound arrival platform and southbound return, an existing pedestrian overpass to access that platform. So what will be added is this trail connection that will meet station standards in this zone, a parking area and a second parking area, on-street parking formalized, improved safety crossings, some bathroom amenities, some gathering locations, and relocation of the trailhead up to this upper overlook so that there aren't crowds gathering at the mouth of the tunnel where line of sight and visibility, if you transition light out of the tunnel, is poor. Then you also have the bridge connecting over and ending about this location, and then this would be future phase connecting south with Shoreline Trail. Just another view on those bathrooms. Those would be composting toilets, 8 fixtures altogether, and gathering space, which is located here, as the train arrivals are here, and people finishing their hike are ending here. This is a major intersection in the project.
Just for the record, can you state what specifically you're referring to instead of referring to here? Because this is
Oh,
going to
sorry.
be transcribed. I understand that the town is probably going to ask that these slides be admitted to the record, but for the purposes of the recording, the audio recording, can you just indicate more specifically what you were referring to?
This intersection is the arrival area near the platform for the northbound arrivals of Metro North, which is immediately across 9D from the Wilkinson Trail, which is in a loop done from Breakneck. You can do a large loop at end in Wilkinson. So people finishing their hike are completing and entering back into the Breakneck Connector project area at this location. That is why we have created parking areas and bathroom amenities as well as gathering space in this location to better accommodate the crowds.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
Just another view of the upper overlook where there is erosion on the trail from the heavy use patterns. We'll be stabilizing that trail with some stone staircases and adding a facility for the trail stewards who are a critical part of this overall safety. They help filter people coming for the hike who might be ill-prepared to complete the hike, and this program has reduced emergency responder calls to the mountain because of that service that they provide. The project, in collaboration with Metro North and DOT and state parks, has already implemented some early safety improvements. That includes the fencing. So now that entire project area has fencing that locks into the existing platforms and keeps people from walking onto the tracks. Train service to this station had been closed until that fencing was complete, and now it is in place and the station has been reopened for service. So the bridge design is a repeating arch as it crosses. The understory of it, there's a steel beam, but then some arches of pre-weathered steel. The deck is a wood deck with a stainless steel rail. That rail goes up from a standard height for bike ped. Up to 8 feet is required by Metro North for the track enclosure as it goes over the tracks to ensure people can't throw things onto the tracks or people themselves are safely contained within the bridge. Just another view of the bridge as it's coming from the north across the tracks and towards the DEP facility, heading south. This is viewed from 9D as you're accessing the bridge, so you see how the curvature of the bridge and the repeating arch will view from that location, and the track enclosure. On the other side, this is the view looking north from essentially in front of the DEP facility and the view of the bridge from that location. As viewed from water, if you're able, you'd see this repeating arch from the water. That'll be less visible. Those other views show really how you'd view it from the land. So current conditions on the site, this is the DEP facility just next to the tunnel of Breakneck, Route 9D, the railroad tracks. There's a double track condition right now, and a maintenance access road that has a crash rated gate right here as for Metro North use. So as DEP will present in their testimony, DEP facility has no driving access for their facility right now. It was cut out in a sort of poor joke of history when road conditions were improved so that there were no longer at-grade crossings of the tracks and the tunnel was installed. And so this would restore access to their facility just as the DEP is about to undertake a multi-year facility upgrade where they'll have daily need to have staff and workers accessing the site, which would otherwise be constructed from the water. Heading south in our future phase, as listed phase 3, this is how it would not only serve the DEP, but would also serve the bike and pedestrian traffic of the Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail. This is the 30% design concept for Shoreline Trail as it stands, but this would essentially show the alignment of how you would reach Cold Spring from that location. Property ownership in this location is a bit interesting, and took some reconnaissance to figure out. This is currently owned now by state parks, and you have
When you say this,
this green section,
okay,
which is essentially the trailhead and upper overlook area, is now owned by state parks. Lands by the DEP chamber and including some accommodation for the aqueduct is the ownership of New York City and DEP. Predominantly, the project area is in this location is owned by Metro North, with some right-of-way allowances for DOT on the 9D corridor. Lands to the east of that then are all part of the Hudson Highlands State Park Preserve and owned by the state. So multiple agreements will be needed, given that ownership pattern, to enable this project to move forward. So the bridge easement is being negotiated with OPRHP, Metro North, and DEP. That will include the air rights over for the bridge.
hold on a second. Can somebody close that door, please? Thank you. I apologize for the interruption.
There's also a breakneck land lease for the Metro North lands for the residual part of the project of the Breakneck Connector, also being negotiated. And then on DEP lands, where the trail continues across to head south on the Shoreline Trail, there will be a permanent trail easement negotiated with DEP. Once constructed, these assets will be owned by state parks, but Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail has a cooperative agreement with state parks, and we'll have supplemental agreements to that as phases move forward, which will identify the maintenance and operations and maintenance obligations that are necessary for Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail to complete. And that will include, in the case of the bridge, the DOT inspections, which will be facilitated for this bridge. And that is the end.
Okay, before you complete, I just want to make sure that is the town requesting that these slides be admitted into the record? Is there any objection on the part of the railroad or department?
No objection.
No objection.
Okay. So for the purposes of the hearing, you guys, that is the town, can you submit printed versions of the slideshow so that I can make those part of the record?
Yes.
All right. So does the railroad have any questions for Ms. Casella?
No, we don't.
The department?
Yeah, just briefly, you had indicated on one of the slides, you were showing that there were 5 planned phases for the trail. Has any part of the trail, or what has been complete to date?
The early safety improvements at Breakneck.
Okay, so has any work begun on any? Has the only work that's been done been those improvements in phase 1?
Correct. Because those were early safety improvements just needed by the railroad on their lands. Those moved forward. The rest of the project is still in environmental review. So we have design development documents, but we have not put forward anything for construction.
Okay, and what is the timeline, or the anticipated timeline for the completion of the entire trail?
2027, 28.
Okay, and how about for the section that we're talking about here, I guess phase 1, what is the timetable for that phase?
Completed in 2025.
All right, and when is it anticipated that construction would begin?
Next year,
Is that,
2023.
all right, is that like early, late, or?
I think we're August at the current schedule.
Okay. And as far as the construction, are there current agreements in place? And I'm talking about the whole phase at this point, not just the bridge, but are there agreements in place for the construction?
The cooperative agreement is in place that enables us to construct and operate this. We have a supplemental agreement that basically brings in a construction manager for state parks, and we're currently negotiating 2 other supplemental agreements, a supplemental B for the bridge and a C for the Breakneck connector with state parks. But those are still under negotiation, as are all of the land transactions.
All right, and I'm sorry, what is the cooperative agreement?
I feel like Maggie might give a better answer for that.
Oh.
It's our legal agreement with state parks that's been approved by the AG's office that lets us, as a third-party, non-state entity, operate and maintain and construct in the park
All right.
on state lands.
All right, and is there an anticipated beginning time for phases 2 and 3?
2, I would like to have start in the next year, and 3 is currently on schedule to start in 2024.
Okay. So will multiple phases be worked on at the same time? Is that
Correct.
the idea?
We're always in some layered level of design.
Okay. And you had indicated previously that the trail was going to go through, I think, 4 jurisdictions. Do you have, at this point, all of the necessary rights that you need to go to construct the whole trail?
Most of the land in the trail is either publicly owned or, in the case of the Zone 4 here, that's scenic Hudson lands and park lands or state park land. So those are uncomplicated. In Zone 5, there are private property interests, and we are at different stages of those negotiations.
Okay, and how much within 5, what percentage-wise, even if it's an estimate, would you say are those private property interests?
There's a total of 12 private properties, and I believe we need 9 more to be negotiated for access.
Okay. And just in terms of the area, and I'm referring now to the area where the bridge is being proposed.
Is that phase 1 on this?
It's within phase 1. I know you had some pictures there. Just wanted to, just for the record, are there any homes in this area?
No. So homes begin, actually, let me. There are about 3 homes right here on the south side of the tunnel, up the, sort of set back from the road or up the hill. And this is that cluster of some private properties. So there are 3 properties in total before the Duchess Manor area, which we have negotiated or own, and then 4 more here. But those are the nearest proximate houses to the project area.
And how far, if you know, are those houses from the project area?
I would say these are about a 1/4 mile, and these would a half.
So you're saying then southernmost?
The southernmost, because of the proximity of the upper overlook and tunnel, I would estimate they're within a 1/4 mile. And north of the project site, I believe those would be a 1/4 to a half mile.
All right, and how about businesses? Are there any businesses in the project area?
No.
Okay, and you had indicated that there's a road, Route 9D, that goes through the project area?
Yes.
All right, and just for the record, is that a one-way or two-way road?
It's a 2-way road currently at a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit.
All right, and how many lanes of traffic does that road have?
2.
And do you know the types of vehicles, passenger, commercial vehicles? Are there any limits on the
Not
type?
that I'm aware, unless there was a height limit on the tunnel, but I've seen trucks and semis going through.
Okay, and then I was going to ask, you had mentioned the tunnel. Are there any tunnels in that area?
Just the one tunnel.
Okay, and there's...
Under Breakneck.
Okay, and so the road, there's a road, or, excuse me, strike that. The road goes through a tunnel?
Yes.
Is that Okay.
featured here.
All right, and how about the trains on the rail line? Do they also go through a tunnel?
Yes, just behind the greenery would be 2 other tunnels related to the railroad service.
And with respect to the number of tunnels between the trains and the road, how many tunnels are there?
3.
Okay, and can you just describe what those 3, or what uses those 3 tunnels?
So this tunnel on Route 9D has 2 lanes of traffic and accommodates just, well, some cyclists go through, and cars and road vehicles. Off to the left on this image, in the railroad corridor here, there are 2 other tunnels that have trains go through, 1 track through each tunnel.
And you had mentioned that there were trailheads in this area, is that correct? How many trailheads are there currently?
On the entire 9D corridor from Cold Spring to the Breakneck area, we have 4 trailheads. In the project area itself, we have 2 trailheads, Wilkinson and Breakneck.
And approximately, do you know how many people a year use those?
We estimate, but it can be as many as 1,100 to 1,700 a day on a good hiking season at Breakneck.
All right, and you had mentioned that, I think you said that there are people who use these trails who go to the Cold Spring station there?
Yes, so the Cold Spring train station has regular service and is the only, pedestrian accessible one to arrive, and you can't really walk from Beacon south at this point in time. So anyone wishing to visit and arrive by train to Breakneck is doing so on a weekday and at Cold Spring, and then walking on 9D in this area of the picture shown.
And how about on a weekend?
On the weekend, it's a mix. So we still estimate that most people arriving, we're just actually gathering some original data on this, but most people arriving to the trailhead currently are doing so by car. But train arrivals do occur at the Breakneck station. There are 6 trains a day, so on weekends, Saturday and Sunday, that is how some people are arriving. If you miss that train, I assume some people are still arriving at Cold Spring. And then on weekdays, that you don't have the option of the Breakneck train station at this time.
I see, so the Breakneck station only operates on weekends?
Correct.
And how far is that Breakneck station from where the proposed bridge would be?
It's within the project area, and so the project area is a mile in total. And so the train station is here. It's separated by some distance, so the arrivals here are about a half a mile from the current trailhead, which is located right here, just south of the tunnel. And the northern extent of the project area is defined by the Breakneck station southbound pedestrian bridge. So it's a mixed number based on which platform you would be using.
I see, and for purposes of, how would the Breakneck station be accessed? Is there a pedestrian bridge?
Yes, this is an existing pedestrian bridge over the tracks to serve that station platform.
All right, and does that platform service trains going in both directions?
My understanding, this is northbound, which we typically call arrivals, and southbound is the northern one.
Okay, and then how would northbound trains be accessed?
That is on the east side of the tracks, so someone may deboard and walk straight onto the project area and start heading south towards the Breakneck Breakneck trailhead. If you were arriving at the north or the southbound train, if you had taken a train from Poughkeepsie, for example, you would walk over this existing pedestrian bridge, and Metro North has recently made some pedestrian improvements, so that's a clearer trail on how people should be heading south to get to the trailhead.
See, so there's 2 separate platforms. Excuse me. One platform is accessed via a pedestrian bridge, if I'm understanding that, is that correct?
Yes.
And then the second platform, is that accessed just from the road? Is that how?
Correct. So this would be the northbound platform, which has now fencing, and you can just walk straight onto the project area. This features the southbound platform, just before fencing, but this picture is being taken from the pedestrian overpass that one would take to access that.
All right. And people who access the area by car, where are they parking?
Currently, there is one dirt lot which has been closed since COVID. There's a barricade of cement barricade closing that lot. So currently, all parking in that area is on-street parking, like this. So it's just on-street parking. Efforts have been made to improve the parking behavior. At some point, people began parking nose in and then backing into the 55-mile-an-hour roadway, just so more cars could fit. But some corrections have been made by DOT and OPRHP to put signs for parallel parking only and try to enforce that with some barricades as well.
I see. So the parking that's depicted in this picture that we're looking at, and just for the record, it's this a slide that in the lower left-hand corner says the need. Are there actual parking spaces designated for that? Like,
No, it's just in a dirt shoulder off of the side of the road.
all right. And as far as the need for a crossing, why is a crossing needed for the trail?
Our alternatives analysis for the trail show that there's no space, given drainage issues and buffer distances, et cetera, and ADA, not to mention the tunnel, which is just an unsafe condition, to have the trail heading south go anywhere but the shoreline trail on the water side of the tracks. And so if that connection needs to be made, this bridge is necessary to connect from that trail route to the Breakneck Connector area, which currently is the prime destination within this system.
All right, and I do have some questions about the proposed crossing. I don't know if I can ask them. We can see who might, if you don't know the answers, or if there's someone else who might know the answers better, just please let me know. Now, for purposes of the crossing, have you been working with a consultant?
Yes.
And
Make sure you speak into the microphone, just so.
So we've been working with Fast and NEP and engineers and Gray Organsky architects, and we're currently pulling into that team Arup Engineering.
Okay, and what's being proposed here is an above-grade crossing of a bridge. Were other types of crossing considered, for example, a grade crossing?
No, we did not feel it was safe to have an at-grade crossing, and I believe Metro North would concur.
All right, and how about a crossing that went under the tracks? Was that considered?
No, that was not considered. This area, as shown, is very susceptible to sea level rise, and we didn't feel, A, to undermine the tracks or to create a situation where water would come from the river and gather in that walking space. So under the tracks was not considered.
All right, and was there any public outreach done for the bridge?
The entire project has had a substantial amount of public outreach over the course of about 7 years, 8 years. So with different workshops showing different design options and gathering input. And during COVID, we continued with online webinars.
All right, and if you know, so the entire trail is running from, or between Beacon and Cold Spring. Where in relation to, let's say, Cold Spring, is this bridge being proposed?
This bridge is, so the county line, this project is also in 2 counties. So the county line is essentially here on Breakneck. So north of, in this project area, is in Dutchess County in the town of Fishkill. South of the tunnel, you are in Putnam County and the town of Phillipstown. So we are, if this is the project area in question and the bridge is at the southern end of that, it's essentially 2 miles, and in a different jurisdiction, you'd go through Phillipstown and then enter the village of Cold Spring. So it's about 2 miles.
2 miles from Cold Spring?
Yes.
Okay.
So for the record, you were indicating at Phase 1 on this slide, building out the vision?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and as far as the bridge that's being proposed, is this going to be a pedestrian bridge?
It's an H10 rated bridge, and the H10 design is at the request of DEP. That was all they felt they needed for their access needs to the facility, and it was enough to accommodate our needs and emergency responder needs that might serve the park and trail.
All right, and for the record, what is an H10 rated bridge? If you don't know.
It's a breakdown on the weight capacity, the load capacity of the bridge.
All right, so are there going to be vehicles using this bridge?
Yes. Limited vehicular access. So vehicular access is restricted to DEP personnel accessing their drainage chamber, and then staff of the park or emergency responders who may drive, for example, like a four-wheeler with a gurney down to, if somebody were in distress on the shoreline trail in the future, for example, they may opt to access it from the north versus the south, depending on where the person in distress would be located.
I see. So as proposed, would the general public be able to access the bridge with their vehicle?
No. And there would be crash-rated gates prohibiting that.
All right, and as far as pedestrians that use this bridge, do you know how many people are anticipated to use the bridge each day?
No, we have a number of visitor projections, but it's a bit of projection math. But I believe we're holding a projection at 600,000, and when the whole thing is built.
All right, and will access to the bridge be available 24/7?
No, we're a dawn to dusk facility, so we would not want people on the bridge or shoreline trail after hours.
And how would access be limited after hours?
We would have gates assigned, especially, and some of the park, obviously, in Area 5 is too permeable, but at the space of the bridge and the shoreline trail, we believe we can close shoreline trail off to prevent people from walking in that area.
All right. And is there any sort of lighting planned or gates planned for this area?
There is a lighting plan in development for the area, and the gates being developed. So the gate currently is being contemplated on the west side of the bridge. So someone would be able to walk on the bridge, but they would not be able to walk further beyond that, past the DEP facility or onto the shoreline trail. And the lighting we have mostly in the parking lots or as required by Metro North to meet station area standards, but we have been contemplating a light for visual security inspection near the bridge so someone could see what activity might be occurring on the bridge.
I see. And so if Phase 1 is built out, but Phase 3, which is right next to it to the south, is not, is there going to be anything to prevent people from accessing what is proposed as Phase 3 before it is built?
Yes, I think it's called DEP. We will be constructing the bridge, and then explicit rights to the bridge while we're building future phases, including Phase 3, would be to DEP for their use of it for the construction. So they'll have their zone of their construction closed off with fences, I imagine.
I know you touched on it briefly. What will be put in place to keep people off of the train tracks in this area?
There's currently fencing installed now around both train platforms and tying in to the tunnel at the south and to a rock cliff underneath the pedestrian overpass to the north. So there's a solid fence line preventing people from going onto the tracks.
All right. And you had touched on briefly what types of vehicles would be allowed to access this bridge?
We anticipate DEP, which could be as large as a small pickup truck going over, or their security personnel doing periodic checks. Other than that, our staff who would use a four-wheeler vehicle, something like this, driving over to just empty garbage and get to the next part of the park or do any patrols, and a similar, not quite like that, but a four-wheel type of a unit for emergency responders to drop off and put onto the trail to do any sort of rescues as needed.
All right, and you had indicated there would be gates to keep other vehicles off of the bridge?
Yes, as shown in the vehicle access diagrams, which are still being narrowed down to the final recommendation, but each would have a crash-rated gate that prevents somebody without the, key to the bollards or to the gate from driving on. So restricted access to DEP, Metro North, and Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail, and I said Metro North.
And
emergency responders, thank you.
And I was going to ask, have there been discussions about how vehicles will be able to access the bridge? Like different designs being proposed?
Yes, we've been evaluating 3 or 4 alternatives and discussing the merits of each, and we're close to a decision on that.
Okay. So there's been no agreement yet on that issue?
No.
All right, so in general, then, do you have a design that is a design for the bridge at this point?
Yes, we're at 50% construction drawings with the design of the bridge. As I mentioned, we're bringing in Arup Engineering. We brought them in the context of doing a third-party review of the design, and they have a few recommendations, but they're all minor. So substantial design, form, and material palette of the bridge are the same.
All right, and have you discussed those designs in the bridge with the railroad?
This is all very new. We haven't even presented them to state parks yet, so we are setting up meetings and we'll share that. And new plans will be updated and distributed to all agencies as we have done at each interval of design on this bridge. So 30, 60, 80 or 80% DD, which is 50% CD, and so we'll issue a 60% CD with the updates being contemplated.
I see, but have discussions, previous discussions on the design been discussed with the railroad?
Yes, they have reviewed and commented on each prior stage of design.
All right, and is the railroad in support of the bridge?
I feel that's a question for the railroad, but we believe so.
All right, and has the design, the bridge design been discussed with the New York State Department of Transportation?
Yes.
All right, and who else have you consulted or worked with on the design of the bridge?
New York City DEP and New York State Parks.
All right, and in terms of what there's agreement on, is there general agreement on where the bridge will be located?
Yes.
Okay, and how about the length of the bridge?
Yes. Our analysis by the engineers and architect show that because of the ADA and other site constraints, which are numerous in this location, that is essentially the only place the bridge can go and meet ADA grade.
Okay, and as far as horizontal and vertical clearances, is there agreement on that?
Yes. So we have submitted Metro North has submitted a request for a waiver to the bridge height to 20 feet 6 inches, and we're awaiting, well, that waiver cannot be granted until the successful completion of this hearing. So, but it is my understanding that DOT has drafted that waiver pending the outcome of this hearing.
And that was a waiver request that was submitted to the New York State Department of Transportation?
Correct.
Okay, and again, just in terms of agreement, is there agreement on the type of bridge and like who's going to be able to access it? I guess the H10 rating?
All parties, and those design criteria and are all being baked into the, the abilities to access or restrictions to access, the H10 height. Different design criteria have kind of been a compilation of requests from DEP and our own needs and the other agencies reviewing. That is also being reflected in some of the legal language to ensure there's permanent access for DEP and that they will have the ability to drive an H10 truck over. So,
Okay, but is anyone suggesting that it should be anything that other than an H10?
no,
Right, okay.
I say the legal agreements because I think it represents that everyone's rowing in the same direction in agreement on what those criteria should be.
All right, and is there general agreement on like the aesthetics and what the bridge should look like?
Yes.
Okay, and other than the vehicle access issue that we discussed, are there any other unresolved issues related to the bridge?
Not that would prohibit advanced design. So some are just design details that will be in future phases of design development, but not any substantial points such as the bridge driving access point.
All right, and are you familiar with the specifications, bridge specifications that are being proposed? As in like, how long it is, how high it is, things like?
I think we have Steve McCorkle, who's the project manager from State Parks, prepared with some of those statistics.
Okay, I'll save those questions. As far as the property rights for the bridge, who owns the tracks that the bridge is going to cross?
Metro North Railroad, or MTA?
It is MTA.
Yeah. All right, and do you have all the rights that are necessary for the construction? All the land rights that are necessary for the construction of the bridge?
Those are in negotiation, but not yet finalized, and will require Metro North MTA board approval.
Okay, and is there any timeline or any concerns about being able to get those rights?
No.
Okay, and will any portion of the bridge be located on the Department of Transportation's right-of-way?
On their right-of-way, no. And we have submitted the landing area for review by DOT and for their approval that that was not going to undermine the road and that its proximity to the road was acceptable.
All right, and when I'm talking about the bridge, I mean the whole structure, including the approaches and everything.
Correct.
Are the approaches?
It's in Metro North land and not interfering in the 9D travel lanes.
So it's not going into the travel lanes, but the DOT's right-of-way goes out beyond the travel lanes. So will any portion of the bridge or the structure be in the Department of Transportation's right-of-way?
I'm seeing a nod of yes.
Okay.
But I guess Steve McCorkle can speak to that.
Okay. Now, as far as being able to construct, are there any drainage issues in the area that need to be addressed before construction can begin?
It's just drainage management. Obviously, with the topography and proximity to the river, and I know of the railroad's concerns, drainage and water and how that's being handled is a prime one. But that we have a draft SWIP that's already under review, so we have a plan for how we're going to manage the water.
All right, and are there any vegetation issues in the area?
Besides invasive vegetation, no. So there will be a comprehensive planting plan, and the issue related to the railroad would be not having vegetation grow into the fence line so that we can verify that the fencing is in place and not compromised with an inspection and have that access. So the planting plan is being designed so that nothing that would be so big and bushy to grow into the fence line would be planted within that area.
All right, and have all the required environmental studies been done?
We are in the midst of the environmental review. So the State Parks is lead agency on that, and that is, approaching completion.
Is there any idea when that might be completed?
By the end of the year, certainly.
And how about, were any safety studies done?
For traffic safety, you mean?
Well, pedestrian safety for, the crossing, for the proposed crossing.
Not that, no.
Okay. And how about any noise studies? Were any noise studies done? I know this is an area that doesn't have a lot of housing, but just for the record, were any noise studies
No.
done? Okay. All right. And is there currently funding available for the construction
Yes.
of the bridge? All right. And where will those funds be coming from?
$14 million will be provided by DEP through an agreement, and that would be provided to state parks. State Parks Capital is putting in $20 million, and then whatever's left would be Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail.
Okay. And how will the construction of the bridge impact rail traffic?
We see construction era impacts. The construction logistics are being developed to determine sort of what level of interruption, and that will be discussed with the railroad. We know we have a midnight work window where there may be no trains for certain activities. Most of the fabrication is anticipated to occur off-site, with the bridge being picked on by cranes in a sort of a shorter time frame.
All right. And as far as maintenance for the bridge, who's going to be responsible for maintaining the bridge?
Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail.
All right. And do you have, are you going to be using contractors for that, or will that be done directly by your organization?
It depends on what needs to occur. But the inspections obviously would be a contracted piece. Routine maintenance of wood boards, what have you, theoretically could be done by staff.
All right. And as far as the funding, who's going to be responsible for paying for the maintenance?
Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail.
I have no further questions.
Does the town of Fishkill or its representative have any redirect for this witness?
No.
Any further questions from the railroad for this witness? Ms. Sarch?
Just one point of clarification. The shoreline trail piece is also owned by MTA, correct?
Correct.
Anything else, Mr. Byer?
Nothing further.
Okay, Ms. Casala, you may step down, but before you do, I just want to make sure we get it on the record. Is the town of Fishkill going to present those slides for the purposes of having them admitted into the record?
Yes.
Is there any objection from the department or the railroad to having that done?
No objection.
No objection from the department.
All right, thank you. So what I'll do at the conclusion of the hearing, we'll adjourn. I'll leave the record open, and you can submit those after the hearing.
Thank you. At this point, we'd like to call the New York City Department of Environmental Protection, their Director of Planning and Bureau of Water Supply, Todd West.
Mr. West, please have a seat. Make sure you talk into the microphone like I'm trying to do now so that we get a clear audio recording.
Your Honor, I have a copy of my slides if you'd like those now.
Okay, sure, go ahead. So what I'll do is I'll mark these as Town of Fishkill Exhibit, what are we on? I think we're on 2. So I'll mark these. Does the department have a copy of these? To the railroad as well?
I do not have a copy.
Do you want to look at these?
If there's an extra copy, otherwise we can wait, and I'm sure that the DEP will provide.
We have extra copies.
They have extra copies?
Yes.
Okay. If you could give those to counsel, Mr. Byer and Ms. Sarch. So I'm going to mark it as Town of Fishkill Exhibit 2 for identification. And council, just advise if you have any objection to having these entered into the record once you've had a chance to take a look.
No objection.
No objection from the railroad? Take your time, Mr. Byer.
No objection from the department.
All right, having heard no objection, I'm going to admit this deck of slides, Breakneck Ridge, New York City Department of Environmental Protection testimony, marked as Exhibit 2 for the record, or I'm sorry, Town of Fishkill's Exhibit 2 into the record. All right, Mr. West, can you raise your right hand for me? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
I do.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
Todd West, T-O-D-D-W-E-S-T.
And just state the organization in which you're coming from for the record so we have it.
Certainly.
I should say the organization you represent.
Sure. I'm the Director of Planning for the City of New York's Bureau of Water Supply.
Excellent, okay. All right. So you can present in narrative form, or if the Town of Fishkill wants to ask questions, or Parks.
I believe Mr. West has a presentation.
Excellent, all right.
I do.
You may proceed.
Good morning, Your Honor. So yes, my name is Todd West. I am the Director of Planning for New York City DEP's Bureau of Water Supply. I'm a licensed engineer. I've been with DEP since August of 1987. And among other things, my responsibilities include initiating capital projects to maintain the state of good repair of water supply assets. On page 3, just to review New York City DEP's mission, which is to enrich the environment and public health for all New Yorkers by providing high-quality drinking water, managing wastewater and stormwater, and reducing air, noise, and hazardous materials pollution. Just a quick overview of the water supply system. It includes 19 reservoirs and 3 controlled lakes, total system storage capacity of 580 billion gallons. It serves 9 million people, or roughly half the population of New York State, including upstate municipalities. Delivers approximately 1 billion gallons of water per day, collecting that water from a 2,000 square mile watershed, and is operated by New York City DEP. The Catskill Aqueduct, which is important to this project, was first conceived in 1903. It was the first project of the Board of Water Supply, which was a predecessor agency to DEP. The graphic on the left-hand slide of page 4 depicts in that what appears as a purple line the alignment of the Catskill Aqueduct over 90 miles from the Ashokan Reservoir in Ulster County to Hillview Reservoir in Westchester County. It was constructed in 2 stages, starting in 1907 and in 1928. It provides 40% of New York City's daily water supply, as well as providing water for several communities in Ulster, Orange, Putnam, and Westchester counties. The Hudson River crossing, excuse me, to go back one slide. This slide also on page 4 of the photo depicts the location of the Hudson River drainage chamber with respect to the Catskill Aqueduct. The Hudson River crossing, otherwise known as the Moodna Hudson Breakneck Pressure Tunnel, is part of the Catskill Aqueduct that crosses underneath the Hudson River. It's about 5.5 miles long and roughly 14 feet 2 inches in diameter. If you look at the graphic on slide 5, with the west being on the right-hand side of that slide, east being on the left-hand side, and follow the blue line, that is the path that water travels through the aqueduct to get underneath the Hudson River. Another notable point of this pressure tunnel is it crosses the Hudson River at more than 1,100 feet below sea level. And also depicted here is the location of the Hudson River drainage chamber in relation to the pressure tunnel and the crossing. A little more specifics about the drainage chamber itself. It was constructed in 1917 as part of the first phase of the Catskill Aqueduct construction. It was intended to provide a full capacity blow-off for the water that's carried in the Catskill Aqueduct and in the pressure tunnel. Structure is deteriorating and in need of rehabilitation. It includes two 40-inch diameter blow-off valves, which, like other assets, are more than 100 years old at this time and require replacement. The rehabilitation and continued operation and maintenance of the Hudson River Drainage Chamber will ensure future system reliability and protect 40% of the water supply to New York City and several upstate communities. And most notably for today, as there is no vehicular access or electric power to the facility presently. Some of our access challenges, a little bit of historical background. The Hudson River Drainage Chamber is currently landlocked on the east side by the Metro-North Railroad tracks and on the west side by the Hudson River. At the time of original construction, early vehicular access was provided by what was called the Beacon Cold Spring Road. Construction of Route 9D and the abandonment of the Beacon Cold Spring Road in 1932 left this parcel inaccessible. There were some efforts to provide access. The New York State Department of Public Works requested a perpetual easement from New York City Department of Water Supply, Gas, and Electricity. It's another predecessor of DEP. In September of 1931 for the purpose of the tunnel through water supply lands to eliminate two grade crossings, one on the north and one on the south side of the current tunnel. In 1932, New York City surrendered a permanent easement in exchange for construction and maintenance of a gravel road leading from the public road to what was called the east shaft of the Hudson River crossing of the Catskill Aqueduct, including the maintenance of a suitable crossing over the tracks of the New York Central Railroad. That east shaft is the Hudson River Drainage Chamber building. A 2013 title search indicated that the State Public Service Commission and New York Central Railroad agreed to develop the access road and authorize such funding. However, complications during the road construction led to an amendment of the plan and a lawsuit between New York Central Railroad and the construction company, and the crossing was never established. Past requests by New York City for at-grade crossings were denied due to the volume and speed of trains coming through the nearby rail tunnel, including in 1973 and in 2013. So on slide 8, just a few photos here depicting some of the past and current situations. The photo on the upper left depicts the Beacon Cold Spring Road about in the middle ground of the photograph. You can actually, if you look closely, there's a automobile parked there in front of the drainage chamber. The photo on the right-hand side is an aerial view that shows obviously the Metro-North tracks, Route 9D, the Hudson River Drainage Chamber, and then on the black dash line, the alignment of the Beacon Cold Spring Road that originally provided access to the chamber. And the bottom is just an excerpt from plans from 1931, State of New York Department of Public Works, plans for elimination of the Breakneck Mountain and Storm King grade crossings, but does call out, as the statement on the right says, this crossing to be closed to the public and to be used as a private crossing for the Board of Water Supply. Just a few more photos on slide 9. One on the left, we've seen this something like this in the, before, showing Route 9D on the extreme left, the Metro-North Railroad tracks about in the middle, the Hudson River Drainage Chamber, and then the Hudson River on the right-hand side, depicting the lack of vehicle access. The photo on the right is a trail that DEP currently uses to gain access to the interior of the facility. A bit of a rock scramble to get to the chamber. DEP is planning a rehabilitation of the Hudson River Drainage Chamber. The goal is to repair the chamber facility to ensure the future system reliability, and not really of those aged 40-inch valves, but replacement of those valves, restore the functionality, ensure the future reliability of the Hudson River Drainage Chamber facility in the Catskill Aqueduct. The scope, as I say, includes replacement of those valves, general rehabilitation and reconditioning of all the components of the chamber, repair or replacement of the roof, site civil improvements, and that will include a fence around the chamber at that time. So we expect to complete our design by the middle of 2023 and proceed into the construction notice to proceed in the third quarter of 2024, but not actually begin construction of the marine access for that project till the fall of 2025, and then valve replacement in 2026 and substantial completion spring of 2028. Just some photos on the right-hand side of the valves and their condition. You can see some of the corroded nuts on the valve bonnet of one of the 40-inch valves.
When did you say substantial completion was going to occur?
Spring of 2028.
2028, okay, thank you.
The need for long-term access. We support the Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail Breakneck Ridge, which provides DEP with long-term access to the facility as required for our facility operations and maintenance, including twice annual operation of the valves that will be installed under the pending project, emergency operation as necessary, routine facility maintenance, security checks by our Bureau of Police and Security. DEP's Hudson River Drainage Chamber Rehab Project anticipates significant boating expenses to provide the daily personnel access over the duration of construction. Permanent land access would eliminate the need for the daily personnel boating expenses. The future rehabilitation of the Hudson River Pressure Tunnel will also require reliable access to the chamber to support those activities, which those projects also would incur high cost to provide daily personnel access from the river. It also provides security for the facility, including lockable gates, and gives our DEP Bureau of Police and Security the ability to patrol the site more readily. And the bridge will also provide utility conduits for permanent electrical power to be brought to the chamber site. Just on a future project that is in the early phases, there are in total 4 pressure tunnels on the Catskill Aqueduct, this being the most significant. We are in the early phases of investigating the state of repair of those tunnels and planning for future repairs. We hope to fly a remote operated vehicle in this tunnel in 2024. So the inspections of the pressure tunnel shaft sites, aerial flyovers, and field visits to identify and monitor potential surface expressions and areas of concern. We'll design and implement tunnel repairs as necessary based on the findings. And any in-tunnel repair would require a long-term aqueduct shutdown and unwatering via the Hudson River Drainage Chamber. So on page 12, 2 photos. The black and white photo from 1915 depicts a sinking pump float that was the technology of the day and was used to unwater the pressure tunnel and all the pressure tunnels. That float actually still is inside the chamber, will be removed under the capital project. And then the photo on the right depicts a large steel cap that is bolted on top of the uptake shaft and is in the basement of the drainage chamber itself. So that will be rehabilitated, will not be replaced because of its size. With regarding funding commitment for the bridge, for the long-term benefit of the New York City water supply and the ability to maintain the Hudson River Drainage Chamber building, DEP has agreed to a 50% cost share of up to $14 million towards construction of the cost of the bridge. The bridge will be constructed initially under a land use permit issued by DEP and then ultimately transitioned to a permanent easement to state parks and for the bridge and a foot trail on New York City lands. DEP and Parks are in the final negotiations of an intergovernmental agreement which will allow DEP to provide that funding to New York State. And that $14 million has been allocated in DEP's FY23 capital improvement plan, which is funded by water rate payers. So the funding is in place for that IGA registration anticipated in early calendar year 2023. And just a statement on public benefit. As I've said, the proposed bridge will provide daily personnel access for DEP and construction crews, allowing for the delivery of the Hudson River Drainage Chamber Rehabilitation Project. It provides permanent vehicular access via the bridge and gives DEP the ability to provide regular O&M of the facility. And as I said, rehabilitation and continued O&M of that facility will ensure future system reliability and protect 40% of the water supply to New York City and several upstate communities.
And for the record, Mr. West, what's O&M referred to?
Operations and maintenance.
Thank you.
Yes. That
Do you have
concludes.
anything else?
No, no, sir.
Okay. All right, any questions from the railroad?
No questions.
Any questions from the department?
Just a couple. How often is the drainage chamber accessed now, or how often does it need to be accessed now?
Right now, we access it probably a couple times a year. The valves that are in the chamber are not functional. They do not operate, so we don't test operate them, although we do visit the site probably twice annually to inspect the valves and their condition.
And how about once it's been rehabilitated?
It'll be similar. We'll want to do twice annual test operations of those valves. Our Bureau of Police Security will be able to make access for security inspections. It's intended currently they would park on the east side of the bridge and travel across on foot to do their necessary inspections and only use a vehicle if necessary.
And in terms of the bridge's design, is there anything being built into the bridge design that's unique for DEP? In other words, that wouldn't necessarily be there if it wasn't for the DEP access?
Possibly the utility conduits that would bring power to the facility. And as Ms. Casala testified, we have asked that it be designed to an H10 loading to let us get pickup trucks, utility trucks that we would need for that test operation and maintenance.
And how often do you anticipate needing trucks to be in, to use the bridge?
Definitely the twice annual for the test operations, and there might be a few other occasions throughout the year.
No other questions?
Anything from the town? Anything further from the railroad? Any clarification?
Nothing further.
So my only question is just a point of clarification. You said they're going to be rehabilitating the facility, so the valves don't currently work, but upon their repair, they will function?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, the existing valves that I depict here will be completely removed and replaced with new valves.
Okay.
Correct. To be clear, the mobilization for a lot of the heavy work, the valve replacement will be done from the river.
Not the bridge?
Not the bridge.
Okay.
That's correct.
All right. Thank you. That's all I had.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. West. You may step down. Does the town of Fishkill have any further witnesses?
Yes, we'd like to call Steve McCorkle.
Mr. McCorkle, please. I don't know where you are. There you are. Watch your foot on the cable there. All right, Mr. McCorkle, can you raise your right hand for me, please? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
I do.
Can you state and spell your name for the record?
Stephen McCorkle, STEPHEN MCCORKELL.
Thank you. All right.
Mr. McCorkle, could you state for the record your position and employer?
I work for the New York State Office of Parks, the Capital Programs Bureau, and I am a capital facilities manager.
And are you familiar with the project we're discussing here today?
Yes.
And what's your involvement in that project?
I'm working with the team through the final design phases, and then procurement, bidding, and construction management portions of the project through to completion and opening.
I'm going to ask you a series of questions involving some of the specifications of the bridge design. If you could bear with me, I will just kind of go through them. Do you know the height of the proposed bridge?
The proposed crossing is 20 foot 6 inches.
And how does that relate to the adjacent or nearly adjacent railroad tunnel underneath Breakneck?
The existing tunnel geometry is, we have 23-foot clearances on the west side of the tunnel, and then on the east side, it's 22 feet.
Okay. And about how far is the proposed bridge going to be away from the Breakneck tunnel?
Several hundred feet. It's approximate.
Okay. Could you describe the existing approach grades to the proposed bridge? What's there now?
Sure. The east side of the tracks, the approach grade is 0.29%, and the average grade along the west tracks is 0.05%.
Okay. And is that going to change significantly with the construction of the bridge?
No, it won't change at all.
Okay. Does the bridge include any safety features?
Sure. The bridge has been designed with a steel pedestrian barrier, minimum 8-foot high railings, and are provided 20 foot from the center line of the track, and there is a mesh infill within that barrier, and again, fall protection is being provided. That's all part of the fall protection provided in accordance with the New York State DOT Bridge Manual 2019 version. There's also 42-inch high railings for the elevated areas of the bridge, in compliance with the pedestrian rail requirements outside of the MNRR fall protection and drop screening zone. There's a 14-foot wide minimum clear path and maximum slope of 5% on the structure in accordance with various accessibility guidelines and codes.
How is the bridge proposed to be constructed?
So we anticipate construction from both sides, the east and the west. So there will be construction, mobilization, and operations taking place from the highway side, from the Route 9D side, and then to establish abutments and landside improvements to the bridge, if you will, from the highway. Then there's also going to be mobilization from the marine side of the marine side of the bridge, from the Hudson River side of the bridge, for again placement of temporary structures and fill for the lifting and placement of the bridge. So we expect the bridge to come up prefabricated in sections on a barge, and then those pieces will be lifted into place from the river side.
Do you anticipate any interruption in railroad traffic?
We don't. We would anticipate that we'd be working with the railroad and their engineering bureau to ensure that any operations over their rail corridor are done at a time and place of their choosing, if you will, or of a time of their choosing, so that it works within existing schedules where there are some interruptions and gaps that would allow for a negotiated period of construction over the rail line.
And I apologize if you already touched on this, but what is the bridge going to be constructed out of? What are the materials that are being used to build the bridge? So
the bridge has essentially a Corten steel frame, and then it has a timber decking, if you will. So those are the primary materials that the bridge is constructed of.
I have no further questions.
Okay, any cross from the railroad?
One question, where does the bridge outlet the drainage?
Right now, the exact drainage, where the storm drainage that is collected from the bridge and where it outfalls, that's going to be part of our updated 50% construction document submission. But the requirements from the railroad indicated that should be outside of their right-of-way.
And do you have any plans for under-bridge maintenance?
The long-term plan would be for the Hudson Fjord Trail to maintain the bridge, be third-party inspections contracted through them to, inspect the bridge as required in accordance with, typical practices from the DOT bridge inspection.
And if those inspections require under-bridge maintenance, what is the plan?
I think at that time, when the exact operations were known, we would want to propose a way to do those inspections, or a way to accomplish those inspections that met the railroad's criteria.
And this will confirm also that all construction plans will be reviewed and approved by the railroad?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And this will also confirm that the construction means and methods will also be approved by the railroad?
Yes.
And the railroad will be requiring the construction to obtain an entry permit?
Yes, and we'll make that application.
Okay. And that means any flagging or force account costs will be covered by others than the railroad, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And funding for the maintenance, how is that being handled?
So HHFT would be providing funding for the maintenance and contracting for that. Again, that Ms. Casala essentially approached that topic and indicated they'd be contracting, a third party to perform those inspections that had experience with this kind of inspection.
And I believe you did say this, that revised design and construction plans for the bridge will be circulated shortly.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
they will be.
For review and comment?
Yes.
Thank you. That's it.
Anything further?
That's it.
Does the department have any questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, is there any document or, that shows the specifications that are being proposed for the bridge that you testified to?
Yes, currently there is a set of specifications that's based on the 50% documents that were provided, I believe, to DOT. We can provide those again, but yes, there is a set of written specifications along with the drawings. Again, those will all be updated and recirculated shortly.
Is that something that could be put into the record?
Yes, we have circulated it by email to DOT and to the railroad within the last week, and it was sent to the court on a disc, but we will be making paper copies of that and circulating it, and we would hope to enter that into the record.
All right.
Okay. What has already been provided.
All right, and I'll just ask, in terms of what is the proposed length of the bridge, or from sort of end to end?
And the bridge length is 437 feet.
All right, and you talked about, and the vertical clearance, is that what you talked about being 20 feet, 6 inches?
Yes.
All right. And that requires a variance, right?
Right. The bridge height waiver as filed through M&R to DOT.
Correct. And I believe that request has been made, correct?
Yes. Yes.
All right. And as far as the bridge, is there any lighting that's planned for the bridge?
The bridge, on the bridge itself?
On the bridge?
No.
All right, how about any signage?
We would anticipate that there would be some level of signage on the bridge itself, within the areas where the patrons would need to encounter that signage, but a specific exact signage plan isn't at hand right now.
All right, and is anything being done to prevent debris from going off the bridge and onto trains?
Yes, essentially there's a barrier with steel mesh, wire steel mesh that would prevent patrons from placing objects from the bridge onto the rail corridor.
All right, and there's some testimony earlier that a portion of the bridge will be constructed in the New York State's, the Department of Transportation's right-of-way. Is that correct?
Right, there is an abutment that would be within the right-of-way, outside the travel lanes, but yes, inside the department's right-of-way.
All right, and will a construction permit be requested to, I'm assuming that work will be done within the right-of-way as well during construction. Is that correct?
Yes, and our contractor would be applying for highway entry permits from the department.
Okay, and as far as locating the structure in the right-of-way, will you be requesting permission from the department to locate the structure within the right-of-way?
That would all be part of our application for the use of that right-of-way.
Okay, just give me one moment here. Okay, I have no further questions.
I have a few. What's the significance of the approach grades you mentioned? Are those the approach grades for the railroad, or is that from the
It's
road
the-
itself?
The existing railroad approach grades.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Ms. Casala may have testified to this, and I just wrote it down as a question. Upon completion, I think you testified that the Hudson Fjord Trail, I'm sorry, I'm saying it wrong, but Ms. Casala's organization, they would be responsible for use and maintenance of the bridge, or I'm sorry, the under-bridge maintenance, but who in fact is going to be owning the bridge once it's complete?
The New York State Office of Parks would own the structure.
Okay. And then, can you just state for the record what the purpose of the bridge height waiver is?
Essentially, the design and the proposed the bridge is just slightly below department standards, so it's just a pro forma to apply for that waiver.
So the bridge would usually be high, or it's normally required that it be taller? Am I understanding that correctly?
There's a potential that well, there's an existing standard. This is just slightly below that. That's the reason for the waiver is required.
Okay. Can you state what the required height normally is that wouldn't require a waiver?
You know what? I don't have that in front of me.
Okay.
We could certainly provide additional information related to the bridge height waiver.
Okay.
I believe the requirement is in the railroad law.
Okay.
I think it's section 51A, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
I'm sorry, for clarification, it's not our requirement, it's DOT's requirement.
Oh, no, no, no.
And it is 23 feet per the DOT requirement.
Okay.
So that's why the waiver is to DOT, it's not our requirement.
Oh, no, when I say the railroad law, I mean the New York State railroad law, not MTA.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had. Is there any redirect?
No. I have one.
You have further question? Go ahead, Mr. Byer.
So as far as the height of the bridge, does the bridge sit above or below the tunnel that is in the area? Is the proposed height higher or lower? Or how does that compare to the clearance of the tunnel?
This issue's been explored quite a bit by HHFT. Can Amy?
Well, the
Answer
Town
that
of Fishkill
question.
can recall Ms. Casala, but
Okay.
right now you're
If we
testifying, so one at a
could,
time?
Yes. Again, the bridge is an arch structure, so there's the height as shown in our plans where the train cars would pass under the bridge at the height noted. Then above that, there's a walkway, there's a deck in that level, in that area where you would actually stand, and that would end up being somewhat above the existing height of the existing tunnel.
Okay, so the deck itself of the bridge is higher than the height of the tunnel?
Right, there's the steel superstructure of the bridge, and then above that, it carries the decking across.
Okay. I have no further questions.
No further? Anything from the railroad?
Nothing further, thank you.
Mr. Reynolds?
Nothing. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. McCorkle, you may step down. Do you have any further witnesses, Mr. Ehrenholz?
No, we do not.
Okay. All right. Is the, I'm assuming the Town of Fishkill is resting its presentation?
Yes, the Town of Fishkill rests.
Okay, thank you. All right, so the railroad is up next. Does the railroad have any witnesses or would like to make a statement, counsel?
We have no witnesses. We just want to reiterate the prior statement in the letter that we had submitted to Your Honor as well as to the supervisor. Subject to incorporation of our comments into the final design and construction drawings and our approval of the final design and construction of drawings and entry into the required real estate agreements, which, as Amy did say, subject to the MTA board. We do support the construction of the bridge. We will not own, construct, operate, or maintain the bridge.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Sarge.
And I'm sorry, one other thing to add, and we also need approval of the access routes. When I say the bridge, I include that, of the approval of the access routes.
And the access routes being on either end?
I think it's only access from one end at the moment that is before the court, and that is the vehicular access on our property to the bridge for DEP's vehicles.
Okay. All right, thank you, Ms. Sarge. All right, Mr. Byer, does the department have any witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor, we do. I'd like to call Kyle Buser.
Mr. Buser, if you may. Watch your foot on the cable there. All right, and just make sure you speak directly into the microphone. Can you raise your right hand for me? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, can you state and spell your name for the record?
Kyle Buser, Kylebusser.
Okay, Mr. Byer, you may proceed.
Sure. Good afternoon, Mr. Buser. Can you tell me who your employer is?
New York State Department of Transportation.
All right, and how long have you been employed by them?
Just shy of 8 years.
All right, and what positions have you held?
I am a registered landscape architect. I'm currently the acting regional landscape architect for Region 8.
Okay, and prior to that, what positions?
Landscape architect.
Okay. And are you familiar with the petition that we're discussing here today and the crossing at issue?
Yes.
All right, and have you been involved in discussions about that crossing?
Yes.
All right, and what has your involvement been?
I've been a liaison point of contact for the department, specifically for Region 8, to the steering committee and other party members of the project.
All right, and have you been here today and heard, all the testimony that's been presented so far?
Yes.
Okay, and there was testimony that was provided that there is a road in the area, Route 9D. Are you familiar with that road?
Yes.
All right, who has maintenance jurisdiction for that road?
New York State DOT.
All right, and did you hear the testimony that was given that described the traffic
Yes.
on the road? And do you agree with that testimony that was given?
Yes.
Okay, and as far as, do you know what is the traffic volume on Route 9D?
From available annual average traffic counts that we've done in 2016 and 2020, we have counts of approximately 2,449 vehicles going northbound and 2,399 going southbound. And those counts were done on weekdays.
All right, and how much separation in terms of distance is there between Route 90 and the railroad tracks at the point that we're discussing?
Separation varies from approximately 60 feet to 120 feet.
All right, and is there any barriers currently to keep people from going from the road onto the tracks?
As was stated earlier, there is a now safety fencing between the railroad and the highway.
And what is there a grade differential between the road and the tracks?
Yeah, there's an existing drainage ditch there, the gravel path, so there's some varying heights kind of along the corridor.
I see. Does the roadway sit higher than the railroad tracks?
Towards the north end, it does.
All right. And there was testimony given that there was that there's a tunnel at this location. Do you know how long this tunnel is?
It's 583 feet long, consisting of 2 lanes, one northbound, one southbound.
All right. And there was testimony given earlier that this is an area that is accessed by pedestrians and that there's parking in the area. Is there anything that currently, I'll say officially, allows parking in the area?
That officially allows it.
In other words, are there spaces, are there marked parking spaces?
There's
or
no official parking spaces. It's just an open shoulder where people parallel park.
All right, and are there no signs that indicate that parking is?
I believe there's signs that indicate you should parallel park instead of, kind of going in nose end.
Okay. And has the New York State Department of Transportation, have they been involved in the trail project that's been mentioned here today?
Yes, New York State DOT is a member of the steering committee. We attend meetings and provide support as needed, functioning as a liaison for the design process.
All right, and does New York State Department of Transportation support the project, the creation of the trail?
Yes.
And are there any improvements being contemplated as part of the project?
Yeah, we support the project, because of its the safety improvements that it will bring along Route 9D, keeping pedestrians safer and just a more safe and efficient transportation system.
All right, and how about parking? Are there any parking improvements being
Yes.
contemplated?
There's concepts for more formalized parking as a part of the project.
All right. And specifically with respect to the bridge, has the DOT, I'll just use that as shorthand for Department of Transportation, have they been involved or in discussions about the bridge?
Yes.
Okay. And has the New York State Department of Transportation seen any proposed designs
Yes.
for the bridge? All right. Does the department have are there any problems or concerns that the department has, design-wise?
There's the open-ended discussion about the vehicle access points that's been discussed previously.
Okay, and when we say vehicle access points, can you just describe what that means?
Access points specifically for emergency vehicles and for New York City DEP access to their facility
Okay.
over the bridge.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to refer to the documents that the department entered into the record. I believe they're departments A through D.
Correct. I have them in front of me here.
Okay. And Mr. Buser, do you have a copy of those documents in front of you?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to quickly go through these documents and just have you explain. If you can look at what's been marked as Department's Exhibit A, can you just describe what this document is showing?
This shows a concept to have vehicular access from Route 9D at the approach to the bridge.
I see. So this is showing access coming right straight off of Route 9D?
Yes.
Okay. And does the department have any concerns with this?
Yes.
Okay. Can you describe what those concerns are?
We have safety concerns due to the curvature of the road, proximity to the tunnel, the nature of how vehicles would be accessing that point to the bridge. And we're also concerned about unwanted use of that access point.
Okay. And now if you could take a look what's been marked as Department's Exhibit B. can you just describe for me, well, first, do you recognize this document?
Yes.
Okay, and can you describe for me what this document is showing?
It shows another concept using the existing Metro North access road for that vehicular access.
Okay, and can you just describe on this, when you say the Metro North access road, what that is on this document?
It's called out on the document as MNR access road, and it is, I believe, the existing access road out there right now that would be attached to a proposed parking lot.
I see, and what is it kind of looks like on my copy, the teal dotted line?
That shows the direction of access from the parking lot across the trail to the bridge.
Okay. And if you could please take a look at what's been marked as Department's Exhibit C. Do you recognize this document?
Yes.
Okay, and can you describe for me what this document is showing?
This shows a similar access to Exhibit B, using the Metro North access road and widening it to accommodate a secondary access road that would allow for unfettered access for Metro North.
I see, and so I see on Exhibit C, we have that same marking, M&R access road. And when you say widening the road, are you referring to that area that's marked secondary access road?
Yes.
Okay, and is that the only difference, this widening between Exhibits B and Exhibit C?
That's the primary difference.
Okay, are there any other differences?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And if you can take a look at what's been marked as Department's Exhibit D, do you recognize this document?
Yes.
Okay, and can you describe what this document is showing?
Shows another conceptual access point to the bridge and DEP facility from the north end of the proposed parking lot.
I see. And what is, on this document, it looks like a series of blue lines. What are they showing?
Shows the direction of travel for the vehicle access.
And now, this document here shows what looks like a parking lot in the far, on the far left of the exhibit. Do you see that?
Yes.
Is that a parking lot that actually exists today?
No.
Okay. Is this an area that is going to be developed as part of the project plan?
It's proposed to be developed in the project plan.
And is this an area where parking will, or at least one of the areas where parking is being proposed
Yes.
for access to the area?
Yes.
All right. There was testimony given today that a portion of the bridge is going to be located in the Department of Transportation's right-of-way. Now, is permission to work in a DOT right-of-way required?
Yes.
All right. And what's required for that?
Highway work permit and a permission for the location of the structure.
Okay. And I was going to ask, is a separate permission required for the location to actually locate the?
Yeah, for the use and location of it.
All right. And have those issues been discussed with the petitioner and the project participants?
I believe they've been discussed, but nothing has been applied for yet.
All right. And as far as the construction of the bridge goes, is the New York State Department of Transportation going to be involved in any way in constructing the bridge?
No.
And is the New York State DOT going to be providing any funding for
No.
the construction of the bridge?
No.
And how about maintenance? Is New York State DOT going to have any maintenance responsibility for the bridge?
No.
Okay. And how about funding for maintenance? Will the DOT be providing any funding for maintenance of the bridge?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. You indicated you were here today and you've heard all the testimony. Is there anything that you heard that you disagree with?
No.
All right. Are there any conditions that if if a crossing is granted, are there any conditions that the department would recommend be added to any approval?
That the clearance waiver be obtained, and that the order be conditioned on review and approval of structures occupancy in the state right-of-way.
All right. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
No.
Okay. I have no other questions.
Okay. Mr. Enherholz, nothing? Ms. Sarge, on the rail?
Just some clarification points. The DOT exhibits C and D. We'll just do D, it's easier. The arrows, the blue arrows, what are those shown being, that you said was for DEP vehicular access? On what are they traveling?
They're traveling from Route 9D into the parking lot, onto the Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail, and then across the bridge to the facility.
Okay, so the idea is for have the vehicles share the Hudson Highland Fjord Trail with the pedestrians?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then what I don't see is the access from the northbound lane on either Exhibit C or D. What is the proposal?
I do not know.
Okay. And are there dimensions of the travel lanes or the access roads shown on either of these exhibits?
Not in these exhibits.
Okay. And is there a turning radius shown on either Exhibit C or D?
Not on C or D.
And are there any, and I think I asked you.
I'm sorry, it does mention outside turning radius on D
Okay,
of 42
Okay.
feet.
thank you. So where would that be on the drawing?
I don't know. I'm not sure if that refers to the design vehicle or to what's possible with the proposed layout.
Great, okay, thank you. And on Exhibit D, and I believe Exhibit C as well, is there any indication how left-hand turns would be made, either into that, out of that parking lot, or into the parking lot, or on Exhibit C, either in or out of that Metro North access road?
There's no indications of that.
Okay. And is there any plan to erect any sidewalks along 9D near the Breakneck Connector or the bridge?
I believe there's plans to install sidewalk on the east side of 9D, along with the proposed parking.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I'm terribly sorry, but east and west, I get very confused.
The top side of the page.
Thank you very much, I appreciate it. So nothing on the west side?
I'm not sure. I believe there might be some sidewalk, again, with the parking at the bottom of that parking lot there
Okay,
on Exhibit D.
okay, thank you. That's it, thank you.
Any redirect, Mr. Byer?
Just a few questions. Looking at Exhibits A through D, are these documents that were prepared by the New York State Department of Transportation?
No.
All right. Do you know who prepared, where these documents came from?
I believe the Office of Parks.
Okay. And these four exhibits, are these four proposals for vehicle access that have been discussed by the parties?
Yes.
Have there been any other proposals beyond these four that you're aware of that have been discussed?
No.
Okay. Nothing further.
Okay. Any clarification from either the town or the railroad?
No, sir.
Ms.
No,
Sargent?
sir, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Besser, you may step down. Does the department have any further witnesses?
Yes, we have one more witness, Franco Panetta.
Mr. Panetta, please have a seat at the end of the table. Watch your feet on the microphone cable. Can you raise your right hand for me? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yes.
Okay, please state and spell your name for the record.
My name is Franco Panetta, Franco, last name Panetta.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Byer, you may proceed.
Mr. Panetta, who is your employer?
The New York State Department of Transportation.
And what is your position?
I'm a professional engineer, one with the grade crossing safety section.
And how long have you been employed in that position?
Over 14 years.
And if you could just briefly describe, what are your job duties?
I review existing and proposed grade crossings and assure compliance with the METCD warning device layout, offer safety improvement recommendations.
And what is the Department of Transportation's role usually in hearings like this?
We review the proposal and the request to create a grade crossing and try to maximize safety.
Okay, and are you familiar with the petition
Yes.
that we're here on today?
Yes.
All right. Now, does the Department of Transportation have rail traffic information that is available to it?
I have rail information at grade crossings that I have looked at on the FRA's grade crossing inventory website.
All right. So based on the information that's available to the department, do you know if the tracks at issue, if the rail lines at issue, are there passenger trains that use these lines?
Yes.
All right. And do you know what companies or what railroads use these lines?
Metro North Railroad and Amtrak.
Okay. And how about, is there any freight traffic on these lines?
Yes.
All right.
Occasionally.
Okay. And as far as the rail traffic information that's available, do you have an idea of how many trains per day use the tracks in the area at issue in this matter?
Information I have from 2016 is approximately 130 trains per day.
All right. And do you know if that number might be less post-COVID?
I think it may have decreased during COVID, but I don't know if they've increased back to normal levels.
All right. And do you know what is the maximum rail speed in the area that we're talking about?
80 miles per hour.
Okay. Is that a speed that is conducive to a grade crossing?
No, not really.
Okay. And is a proposal for a bridge consistent with the department's policy and safety concerns that it has?
Yes, sir.
All right. And before coming here today, did you look into any accident history, rail accident history, that's available to the department?
Once again, it's only based on accidents at grade crossings. Outside the grade crossing limit, I don't have access to that information.
All right. Do you know, just from your research, if there was any recorded accidents between, let's say, Beacon and Cold Spring?
No accidents at grade crossings.
Okay. Did you have an opportunity to observe the area where the bridge is being proposed?
I did, yes.
Okay. And when did you observe that?
Today.
All right. And were there any vegetation issues of concern that you noticed that might,
No vegetation issues associated with the construction of a bridge.
Got it. And how about drainage issues for?
I didn't happen to notice any.
And as far as, strike that. So have you been here today and heard all the testimony, regarding the crossing at issue?
Yes.
All right. And based on your observation that you had today and the testimony, are there any safety concerns related to the project?
I think they've been addressed.
All right. And what is the department's recommendation regarding the proposal?
The department is not opposed
It's not opposed to
to the
this?
construction of a grade separation.
Okay. And does the department have any safety-related conditions that it recommends be added to in order for the crossing is granted?
We'd just like to be sure that pedestrians are corralled into proper location and directed away from the railroad tracks.
All right, so is there anything like fencing that you,
The fencing was mentioned today on the bridge and whatnot, but it may be necessary off the bridge to make sure pedestrians stay on their dedicated path.
all right, and is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, thank you.
No further questions.
Does the town of Fishkill have any crossing, Mr. Ernholz?
No, sir.
Does the railroad?
No, sir, thank you.
Okay. You may step down, Mr. Panetta.
Thank you.
Does the department have any further witnesses?
No, Your Honor, we don't.
Okay. Does the town of Fishkill or the railroad have any rebuttal witnesses they wish to call?
No, sir.
All right, thank you. Okay. So now that the parties have completed their presentations, at this time, anyone from the public who wishes to speak may do so. Please keep your comments brief so that we may allow everyone who wishes to speak an opportunity to do so. When you come to the microphone, please state and spell your name for the record, then you may make your statement. If anybody, but before you do that, I just want to state for completeness of the record that this is a public hearing and notice was published in the Courier on July 20th. And the notice was admitted as ALJ Exhibit, I believe, 5. So if we have any members of the public that wish to make a statement, Miss, please step up to the podium, state and spell your name for the record, and just make sure you speak into the microphone.
Thank you, Your Honor. I want to start by saying I don't think this hearing was publicly noticed enough, and that the public should have been advised better that it was happening. I only heard about it last night. I think there is a lack of transparency for the public to be here and give input. My name is Louise Daniele. It's Louise, Daniele, Daniele. I'm a Town of Fishkill Town Board member, but I'm speaking as a resident of Fishkill for 29 years. I'm also a retired state trooper who worked down in SP Cold Spring in a satellite during the 90s, which no longer exists, but it covered the town of Phillipstown and the Cold Spring area. Back then, I dealt with many complaints in the area of Cold Spring and Phillipstown from hikers coming from out of the area in New York City who would become lost, injured, and involved in various accidents, slip and falls, and other things, as well as being in the woods during forest fires. I'm opposed to the trail and the bridge because of the large amount of people it will bring to the area, which increases traffic accidents, both motor vehicle and civilian accidents, and it's unsafe. The many hikers near the road and walking in the road will now be able to cross a bridge and have the opportunity to access to go into the Hudson River, as well as the trails themselves, which may be overused and will ruin the natural beauty of the mountain, river, and the area itself. I believe building a bridge over a railroad or even a crossing there creates a very large liability for the town of Fishkill taxpayers, the state and the Metro North and DEP as well. With the influx of thousands of people coming on busy days by car and train, this creates future lawsuits that may arise from injury or death from any future incidents or accidents. I'm opposed to it. The only way to make it safe would to be not to build it at all. In the very end, who will be responsible for the maintenance, first aid safety, hiker safety, civilian safety? Will the Parks Department hire people to take care of all those things from beginning to the end and after, including patrolling the bridge, maintaining the bridge, and the road leading up to it? Who would guide hikers down from forest fires that occur? Who will be there? Will there be a camera on the bridge, as other large bridges have, to help those who potentially have mental health issues? The local fire departments are limited as it is. This will put a strain on them as well. There seems to be many issues that still need to be addressed before the approval for a bridge is given: permission, permits, easements, SECRA, and others. Lastly, I feel this hearing should be held open for the public to have an opportunity to know about it and comment on it and voice their concerns if they wish, or to leave it open for a written comment period for at least a few weeks for those who were unaware of this hearing to be able to write in. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your statement. Are there any other members of the public present in the room that would like to make a statement?
Yes.
Please, sir, step up, state and spell your name for the record.
Good afternoon. My name is Gregory Hart, Gregoryhart. I work for the Federal Railroad Administration, and we would like to make a statement regarding today's topic, and specifically speaking of the bridge as a grade separation over the railroad tracks, and that we are in support of that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other comments? Okay, so generally the department will issue its determination within 90 days. If you would like to receive a copy, please put your information on the sign-in sheet located to my left near the door. I'm going to leave the record open pending submission of further documentation by the Town of Fishkill, as discussed on the record here today. If there is nothing else, we'll adjourn. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you, everybody.